Welcome everyone to another episode of Kingdom of Dreams podcast. Today I'm going to do something different, which I've been trying to do for a while, just haven't been able to get around it, and we'll try to see if I can pull this off consistently, maybe 2 times a week, maybe 3 times a week. We'll see what happens. But essentially, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all these books that I have, and sometimes the ones that are upcoming, which talk about behind the scenes stories of films, animations, series, documentaries, to have you not. And today I have a very special book written by Jerry Schmitz, The Wild Robot. The top of the book has a cover which can be sort of taken off. As you can see, a beautiful illustration here. But when you take it off, you'll see a great piece of artwork featuring Roz and Brightbill. And I'll just kind of go through the book page by page as much as I can. So the front, the opening has this beautiful illustration of Roz sitting on these rocks in a cart box and rocks, and with the water hitting the waves hitting the rocks. It's a beautiful illustration. Here we have table of contents and some artwork. As you can see, it has amazing breakdown on all the story elements and all the characters. So there's, you get to meet the characters, Roz, Fink, Pinktail, obviously Bright Bill, and there's introduction and forwards by different individuals. Introduction by Chris Sanders, who's the writer director, and preface by Peter Brown, who's the author of the original book, and forward by Lupita Nyong'o, who also plays Roz, as aka Wild Robot. Um, so this is a forward, and with some beautiful illustrations and some preconceived artwork of the Wild Robot or Roz, which I felt here that it looks a lot like Iron Giant, which came out in early 2000s. I think it was 2004 or three or five, which this movie gets inspired a lot of, some elements from that film. This is the migration illustration, as you can see here. And one of the quotes in the film, which director Chris Sanders talks about in this book, is the whole theme of this film was kindness is a survival skill, basically. And that's what this film tries to promote throughout, that how you have to be kind to others, regardless of, what you may think or what you may feel, which is very much needed in today's world. Here's this beautiful illustration of a deer. A lot of stuff in this film reminded me of, especially the forest sequences, even the final finale of Bambi. If you haven't seen that, go check that out. It's almost an 80-year-old film, and one of my classic favorites. A very, very dark film, even for its time. I was reminded a lot of that. This is a introduction by Chris Sanders, and it has all these little blurbs from executive producers, from storyboard artists, from head of stories. Look at this. I mean, I love this. I can literally pull these out, which I won't, of course, and frame them. This is the section on the island, which, by the way, there's another edition of this book which is called Deluxe Edition. I think it's pretty much this book, but it comes in a bigger case and has all these storyboard illustrations, which I will link you in the description on this video. And then we have, well, they're right there. Kindness is the survival skill. And then we have quotes from Jacob Jensen, head of character animation. He talks about, aside from oozing kindness at its core, there's a bittersweetness to the book that attracted me to this project. When Chris described the film as coming with a built-in heartbreak, I knew that I was chasing something personal and meaningful to him. To me, the story is about surrendering to something that transcends oneself. In this case, the awesome responsibility of parenthood. It's also about heroism, of the mundane, acceptance of chaos, as well as rejecting defining yourself by your programming, but rather by choices you make. And that's pretty much what the core of this film is, as Jacob Jensen pointed out. And Yeah, I mean, I cannot speak enough about this film. I absolutely love this film. It's one of the best animated, if not probably in the top three animated films ever made. This is the book cover of the original Wild Robot book. There are some lovely quotes here by executive producer by Dean DeBlois and Kristen Lau. Look at this. This is all early works, right? And um, one of the things this book talks about, where the director talks about, this is a beautiful illustration. I mean, I love this. This is probably like a preconceived, the butterfly sequence. This is probably that's what that's about. And it says summer here. One of the things that Chris Sanders talks about is that how they wanted Ross to have no facial structure. So you don't see a smile, you don't see a sad emotion, and which they were able to pull off really, really well without it being annoying at the same time. What was so amazing about the facial structure is that even though you can't see any emotion, you felt every single thing that Ross was thinking, and that goes into the whole character sketch, the character build up, what they did to make that something that you can relate to. I mean, look at this. This is a beautiful illustration. Section on Meet Ross and beautiful artwork here. All early works. Nico Marlet, character designer, says, I was isolated for 3 years at home with my dogs. I'm assuming he's talking about COVID. Actually, I was like Roz with my three dogs. And to me, this is what the movie's all about. Animals are good for your soul. This I know for a fact. And then Chris Sanders has a quote here. Roz has a very strong silhouette, but the details were not there. It was very good landing zone to strive for because it gave us a lot of room to be creative. The protagonist in this film, Lupita, she talks about that how she was able to spend a lot of time with the animators, um, which helped transform the character um, to what it was. And one of the sound designers, I forget his name, and I might see it as I'm flipping through. He said that it took them 2 years to pinpoint the exact voice of Roz, which I think is phenomenal. But because if you hear Lupita in as who she is in real life and you compare to Roz, um, they're completely different, but they're not. And Lupita's voice, sorry, Roz's voice really carries the film, which obviously is done by Lupita. Here's more concept work, illustrations. Jacob Jensen, the head of character animation, his quote talks about Chris and I, Chris as in Chris Sanders, the writer director, have worked together both on How to Train Your Dragon and The Croods. So I would describe it as a relaxed familiarity and shorthand we have developed. Chris is big picture sort of director in that he leads with a light touch, leaving his collaborators to explore and contribute. You have to pay close attention to how he reacts to things and what he will say insofar as what's important to him about any given moment you're working on. Nothing makes you want to push yourself more than when you feel trusted. And that's true. I love this illustration. I mean, look at the depth and the detail in this. Same here. I wish they sold these. I'm sure they can because people would buy them. Um, we live in a digital world, but we need more of print stuff. Raymond Zibach, who's a production designer, he had a lot to say in this book. He talks about Daniel created, I'm not going to say his last name because I don't want to butcher it. Daniel created a number of beautiful paintings of Roz camouflaged into the environment while she was discovering the animals on the island, and in some moments even trying to mimic them. Head of story, Heidi Jo Gilbert, she talks about how she worked with visuals and sound, more importantly than just visuals, which is something that traditionally you do in animation, for her to sort of be able to come up with ideas. And it's sound is so important, not just in animation, in any form of storytelling, which a lot of people don't think about because you can, and I've said this many times on this podcast, an audience can forgive bad visuals, but they cannot forgive bad sound. And bad sound doesn't necessarily mean like distorted audio, but also like, you have to have the right fit. Like, for example, for Roz, it took them 2 years to find the right voice. So that's important. This is the butterfly sequence, which is probably going to become like one of the iconic scenes. in cinema's history. Michael Lozier, effects supervisor, he says the first images from production that I saw were gorgeous concept paintings of the island. Our visual effects supervisor, Jeff Budsberg, showed them to me during a brainstorming session about brushstroke techniques, and I just immediately loved the style and wanted to know more about the project. When I found out the goal was to maintain the same style in the film, I knew I wanted to be a part of it. And that's what's so great about, aside from the story and everything else in this film, is the painting element. It was there in Puss in Boots 2 as well, which came out last year by DreamWorks. But this just sort of takes it to another level because what it does is the entire film sets on an island, with trees and ocean and nature, everything around them, and to have that in a visual paint, like in a painting style with all the 3D characters, was just a perfect blend. Every little detail was a perfect blend. Visuals. This is again another iconic painting. I think I would love to get this somehow and frame it here somewhere or part of my studio. More beautiful work. Um, I'm not sure. I think these are illustrations. Yeah, these are not scenes from the film. Definitely these are like sort of previs, and these are also illustrations. These are like all storyboards. Here's a section on Meet Bright Braille. Look at that. That's phenomenal. The Egg Hatches, there's a sound on the soundtrack by Chris Bauer. There's a minute and a 4 second track on the hatching, which I recommend you get it on Apple Music or Spotify. It's a beautiful soundtrack. That 1 minute and 4 second is probably one of the best tracks in the entire score. This is beautiful. Totally love this. This is the actor that played Bright Bill, Kit Connor. I mean, look at these illustrations. You know, what's so important about these books is that even if somebody who's not a moviegoer or into animation, when I say moviegoer, I should say movie buff, if people actually even got these books for like a day or two and didn't even read everything and just went through the visuals, it just says so much about what goes into making these films. Like it's a 4 to 5 year long project, maybe even longer in some cases. Um, Meet Fink. Pedro Pascal nailed this character. I thought it was one of the best characters um, in the film, and the arc of this character was phenomenal because foxes are known to be very clever and very conniving and all that, and you see how this character transforms, which I'm not going to reveal in the film for those who haven't seen it, but how the character transforms from beginning to end. This is more or less, I think, the final look of Roz. This a lot, not Roz, sorry, Fink. Fink reminded me a lot of Disney's Fox and Hound. Um, Nothing to do with the premise or the character, just the colors that I saw. It just kind of brought back Fox and Hound for me. Pinktail is probably, and it's Pinktail in the Family. Pinktail is played by Catherine O'Hara, Home Alone mom, and she's also in the new movie Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice. Pinktail is the humor relief as well as the motherhood character in the entire film and the kids that Pinktail has. I mean, you guys are gonna get a kick out of it. It has some one of the most amazing short lines that really hit home in terms of humor, in terms of boldness. Really well done. That's a picture of Catherine O'Hara. Forest full of animals. So these are the rest of the characters. There's a lovely sequence with the raccoons in the beginning of the film, which people will enjoy. Thorn, which is played by who was played by I did not know this until the credits roll because they show who played who. Mark Hamill, obviously, aka Luke Skywalker, but you cannot tell um, it's Mark Hamill because the voice that he has is just so different, and his character plays a very important role in the film, especially towards the end. Paddler had also an integral part to the entire film. That's what a good story does. Every main character has a goal, and whether it's a protagonist or a supporting cast, they all have their little goals which combine in an overall arc of the story, and that's what this film does really, really well. I'm not saying other films don't, but this one does it really, really well. Every character is there for a reason, and every character has its own goal. This is obviously the other part of the film where Roz comes from. I'm not going to talk about it very much, but it's like a futuristic city, if you want to call it. Here are some more illustrations. Meet Thunderbolt. That was a played by Ving Rhames, another good character. Very small role, but important role for sure. And this is Meet Longneck, another integral part of the film. The oldest, the wisest, and the biggest goose on our island is Longneck. From the migration from story to screen, that was a breathtaking sequence, and that's all I'm going to say about it. Uh, Little quote from Chris Sanders: Roz is so single minded about getting this task done, states Sanders. Initially, it's just the way she's programmed, but she becomes obsessed with the task that is Bright Bill. Cinematography. Um, I'm going to read a quote here. It says, the opening of the migration sequence provided us with the opportunity to present a big sense of scale to our world through the aerial photography in vast landscapes with a flight documentary feel. Yeah, it's true. It's so true. Section animation, music. I do urge you guys to get the soundtrack from Apple Music or Spotify, and it's totally integrates with the soundtrack, but lives on its own too. Sorry, it totally integrates with the film, but it lives on its own too. The world of universal dynamics. That's a chapter in the film. I'm not gonna dive too much into it, but just giving you guys a little bit of visuals. The winter sequences were one of the most breathtaking sequences. I mean, you actually feel that you're physically there, the way they were able to put the characters in this environment, and you feel that you're there and you're feeling their pain. Yeah, this film is a combination of, to me, it got small elements from Iron Giant, E.T., Wally, Bambi, um, Black Stallion. Yeah, there's just so much in there, and but it stand on its own. It's not like it copied anything. It just got influences from there, and it's in its own self and its own film. Yeah, we're almost coming to an end here. I would love to get this printed. This is breathtaking. Beautiful. This is Wantra. I'm not gonna say much about it, but you guys will figure it out by when you watch it. It's played by Academy Award nominee Stephanie Husu. Sorry if I ruined that name. Um, Section again, I'm not gonna talk much about this. This is more towards the end of the um, film. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. I totally urge you guys to go watch the film if you haven't. And this is the entire team, the amount of work that goes into making these films. I'm so glad that they put that in there. And the final page. And that's it. So if you guys haven't seen The Wild Robot, do check it out. It is in theaters. I urge you to watch it on the big screen, not on streaming platform. Do watch it on streaming platform when it comes out, after watching it the second time or third time. But you definitely got to see the movie in the theaters at least once, if not twice. Book, I put a link in the description for this book as well as there's a deluxe edition. Totally worth having it. It teaches you about behind the scenes stories, but also like a collector's item down the road. And yeah, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. As always, this is an attempt. Hopefully, I can make this happen a little bit more. Should be doing all these behind the scene kind of, going through the book and talking about the film and some behind the scene stories. Yeah, there's a lot to cover, and I really want to thank you, as always, for listening in. To all these conversations, the interviews and the conversations with directors, cinematographers, screenwriters, and everybody behind the scene will continue, as they have been. And I thank you so much for constantly coming back and, learning and hearing these conversations. I truly appreciate it. Thank you so much.